There are moments in history when the universe holds its breath, when the course of civilizations pivots on a single decision, a single word spoken in defiance or surrender. For humanity, that moment arrived on a cold station orbiting a dying star, in a chamber filled with beings who had walked the cosmos for millennia before the first human ever looked up at the night sky and wondered what lay beyond. Ambassador Rebecca Torrens stood at the entrance of the Grand Assembly Hall, her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the silver clasp on her Navy uniform. She was 47 years old, a former military officer turned diplomat, with auburn hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes the color of storm clouds. Those eyes had seen too much in her 19 years of service to the Galactic Council. She had watched humanity beg for scraps of territory, plead for trade agreements that barely kept Earth's colonies alive, and swallow insults that would have started wars among species with any sense of pride left. Beside her walked James Okonkwo, her chief advisor and the only person on the station she truly trusted. He was a tall man with dark skin and graying temples, his expression perpetually calm even when the political storms raged around them. Today, however, she noticed tension in his jaw as he scrolled through his data tablet. "They have 12 species backing their claim already," James said quietly, his Nigerian accent barely detectable after decades in diplomatic service. "The Voranii, the Kelesh Dominion, even the Prax Collective. This is coordinated, Rebecca. Someone orchestrated this." Rebecca nodded, her mind racing through possibilities. The message had arrived at dawn, station time. An emergency convocation of the Galactic Council. Charges of territorial aggression. Evidence of human expansion into forbidden zones. The penalties for such violations were severe: economic sanctions, technology embargoes, or worse, forced dissolution of colony worlds. The massive doors opened with a hiss of pressurized air, and they entered the chamber. It was a sight that never failed to steal her breath, even after hundreds of visits. The room stretched upward for nearly 100 meters, its walls lined with viewing galleries where thousands of observers from across the galaxy watched the proceedings. The floor was a circle of polished obsidian, and arranged around it in concentric rings sat the representatives of 112 species. Humanity occupied Ring 7, the outermost circle reserved for junior members. The Draknari Empire, oldest of the Council races, sat in Ring 1, closest to the Arbiter's throne. High Arbiter Theon presided from that throne now, an ancient being whose species had achieved spaceflight when Earth was still cooling from its formation. His form was humanoid but elongated, his skin translucent and faintly luminous, with 3 eyes that saw across multiple spectrums of light. He had served as High Arbiter for 300 years, and in that time, he had never once ruled in favor of humanity on any contested matter. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Torrens of Earth," Theon's voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly by the neural implants every delegate wore. "You stand accused by the Voranii sovereignty of gross violations of Council law, specifically the unauthorized settlement of 12 worlds within the Forbidden Reaches, territories designated as neutral space by the Treaty of Amorous." Rebecca felt her heart sink. The Forbidden Reaches were a vast region of space bordering Voranii territory, declared off-limits to expansion 2,000 years ago. Humanity had never gone near it. Their colonies were light years away in the opposite direction. From Ring 2, Ambassador Kravik of the Voranii rose to his feet. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in segmented armor plating that was part of his natural biology. His species were warriors, conquerors who had subjugated 47 worlds before joining the Council and agreeing to its laws. "Honored Arbiter, esteemed colleagues," Kravik's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "I present evidence gathered by our deep space monitoring stations. 12 human colony ships entered restricted space over the past 18 months. They established settlements on worlds explicitly forbidden to all Council races. This flagrant disregard for our laws cannot stand." A holographic display materialized above the chamber floor, showing star charts and what appeared to be colony vessels bearing Earth's insignia. The ships moved through space, approaching planets within the marked boundaries of the Forbidden Reaches. The timestamps showed recent dates. James leaned close to Rebecca. "Those are falsified." Our colony ships haven't been in that sector at all. This is a setup. Rebecca knew he was right, but proving it would be nearly impossible. The Voranii had access to the Council's most advanced technology. Creating convincing false evidence would be trivial for them. She stood, activating her own holoprojector. High Arbiter, I categorically deny these charges. Earth has maintained detailed navigation logs of every colony vessel in our fleet. None have entered the forbidden reaches. I request time to present our evidence and to conduct an independent verification of the data the Voranii have provided. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several delegates leaned toward their aides, whispering urgently. Rebecca saw some nodding, but far more wore expressions of skepticism or outright hostility. Krovik's laugh boomed across the hall. The humans wish to delay, as always. They wish to manufacture counter-evidence while real settlements continue their illegal operations. I motion for immediate sanctions pending a full investigation. Seconded, called another voice from Ring 3. It was Delegate Shorn of the Kelesh Dominion, a reptilian species known for their shrewd political maneuvering. Rebecca's hands clenched into fists. This was moving too fast. In council procedure, once sanctions were seconded, they could be enacted within hours unless she could provide immediate, incontrovertible proof of innocence. High Arbiter, she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest, I invoke Protocol 17. I demand a neutral investigation team be dispatched to verify all claims before any sanctions are imposed. The chamber fell silent. Protocol 17 was ancient, rarely used. It allowed any accused party to demand independent verification, but it came with a price. If the investigation proved guilt, the penalties were doubled. Theon's three eyes focused on her with an intensity that felt like being examined under a microscope. You understand what you invoke, Ambassador Torrens? If these settlements exist as charged, Earth will face not sanctions but total embargo. No trade, no technology exchange, no council protection for any human world. I understand, High Arbiter, Rebecca said. And I invoke it nonetheless, because humanity is innocent of these charges. For the first time in her years of service, she saw something flicker across Theon's luminous face. Surprise, perhaps. Or respect that it was gone in an instant. Very well. Protocol 17 is accepted. A neutral investigation team will be assembled. Until their findings are presented, all proceedings are suspended. He struck his staff against the floor, and the sound reverberated through the chamber like a bell tolling. This session is adjourned. As the delegates began to file out, James touched her arm. That was either the bravest or most foolish thing you have ever done. Rebecca watched Krovik leave through a far exit, surrounded by his aides. He did not look back, but she saw confidence in his stride. They would not have brought false charges unless they had a way to make them stick, she said quietly. Someone has actually established settlements in the Forbidden Reaches and made them look like ours. When the investigation team finds them, we will be condemned. Then we have one chance, James replied. We find the real culprits before the investigation concludes. We find out who is framing us and why. Rebecca nodded slowly, feeling the weight of an entire species settling on her shoulders. Earth had been pushed around, dismissed, and humiliated since joining the galactic community. But this was different. This was an attempt to destroy them entirely, and she would be damned if she let that happen without a fight. The investigation team arrived at Zenith Station 3 days later aboard a sleek vessel bearing the neutral colors of the Council's Enforcement Division. Rebecca watched from the observation deck as it docked, her reflection ghosting across the reinforced viewport. She had not slept more than a few hours since the hearing, her mind constantly churning through possibilities and dead ends. James entered the observation deck carrying 2 cups of coffee, real Earth coffee, not the synthetic substitutes most of the station offered. Thought you might need this, he said, handing her one. The team leader is a Cessaran named Vorik. He has a reputation for being thorough and incorruptible. That is what worries me, Rebecca said, taking a sip. The bitter warmth did little to ease the knot in her stomach. If he is truly incorruptible, then whoever set this up made sure the evidence is airtight. They knew we would demand an investigation. Over the past 72 hours, her small diplomatic staff had worked around the clock, reaching out to every human colony, every military vessel, every research station. They had compiled complete navigation logs, communication records, and sensor data. Everything confirmed what Rebecca already knew: no human ships had entered the forbidden reaches. But she also knew that would not be enough. Evidence could be dismissed as incomplete or tampered with. What they needed was to find the actual settlements and prove they were not human. A comm signal chimed, and James activated his tablet. His expression darkened as he read. "Rebecca, you need to see this. Our intelligence contact in the Voranii delegation just sent something." He transferred the data to the wall display. It showed internal Voranii communications, encrypted but partially decoded by Earth's cryptography teams. Rebecca scanned the text, her pulse quickening. "They are calling it Operation Clearance," James said. "The Voranii have been planning this for months. They want humanity expelled from the Council and our territory opened for colonization. But look at this section. They reference a partner species, someone providing them with human technology signatures and vessel designs." Rebecca leaned closer. "The Thrain Collective. Why would they help the Voranii? The Thrain have always been neutral, focused entirely on trade." "Not anymore, apparently," James replied. "According to this, the Voranii promised them exclusive rights to human medical technology in exchange for their assistance. Someone leaked our bioregeneration research." The implications hit Rebecca like a physical blow. Bioregeneration was humanity's most significant contribution to galactic science, a breakthrough in cellular repair that could extend lifespans across multiple species. Earth had carefully controlled its distribution, using it as leverage in negotiations. If the Thrain had stolen it and shared it with the Voranii, they could replicate human medical advances while simultaneously destroying humanity's position in the Council. "We need to get this to Vorik," Rebecca said. "This proves conspiracy." "It proves communication between two Council races," James countered. Without more, Vorik could dismiss it as normal diplomatic channels. "We need something concrete, something that ties them directly to the fake settlements." Rebecca turned back to the viewport, watching the investigation vessel complete its docking procedures. An idea began forming in her mind, dangerous and possibly suicidal for her career, but it was the only path she could see. "The investigation team will travel to the Forbidden Reaches to examine the settlements in person," she said slowly. "That gives us perhaps a week before they make their report." "James, how many deep space-capable vessels does Earth have in this sector?" 3. The research vessel Newton, the cargo hauler Wellington, and the patrol ship Defiance. Contact Captain Reeves on the Defiance. I need him to do something that will probably violate about 15 Council regulations." James raised an eyebrow. "What exactly do you have in mind?" "If the Voranii and Thrain built these settlements to frame us, they had to transport materials, personnel, equipment. Those ships would have left traces in the Forbidden Reaches, exhaust signatures, quantum wake patterns, things that cannot be easily faked. I want Reeves to enter the Reaches covertly and scan for non-human vessel signatures around those settlement sites. Rebecca, if he is caught, it will look like we are tampering with evidence. It will destroy any credibility we have left." "If we do nothing, we are already destroyed," she replied. "At least this way we have a chance." James was silent for a long moment, then nodded. "I will send the message through encrypted channels. If this works, if we find proof, how do we get it to Vorik without revealing how we obtained it?" "Leave that part to me," Rebecca said, though she had no clear answer yet. "One problem at a time." The formal meeting with Vorik took place in a neutral conference room deep within the station. He was smaller than Rebecca expected for a Cessaran, barely reaching her shoulder, with blue-gray skin covered in fine scales and large, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. His team consisted of 4 other beings from different species, each specialists in various forms of forensic analysis. "Ambassador Torrens," Vorik said, his voice surprisingly deep for his small frame. "I have reviewed the initial evidence provided by both parties. The Voranii data appears comprehensive. Your navigation logs are equally detailed. This presents an interesting contradiction." "Which means someone is lying," Rebecca said bluntly. "I assure you, Investigator Vorik, it is not us. Humanity has no reason to violate Council law. We have been working for 2 decades to earn respect and standing here. Why would we throw that away for a handful of worlds we do not even need?" Vorik tilted his head, a gesture Rebecca had learned indicated curiosity in his species. "A logical question. Yet the Voranii suggest that human expansion has been frustrated by limited territory allocations. They propose that desperation drove your species to take what it could not negotiate for. Then why would we choose the most forbidden region in known space?" Rebecca challenged. "If we wanted secret colonies, there are thousands of unclaimed systems that would not trigger a galactic incident." "Another fair point," Vorik acknowledged. "These contradictions are precisely what my investigation will resolve. We depart for the Forbidden Reaches tomorrow. I expect to have preliminary findings within 5 days. May I request that a human observer be allowed to accompany your team?" Vorik shook his head. "Council protocols prohibit involvement by accused parties in their own investigations. However, I assure you that my team operates with complete impartiality. If humanity is innocent, my report will reflect that." After the meeting ended, Rebecca and James walked back to their quarters in silence. They had done what they could through official channels. Now everything depended on Captain Reeves and whether he could find evidence before Vorik completed his investigation. 2 days passed with no word from the Defiance. Rebecca attended required diplomatic functions, maintaining a facade of calm confidence while internally she felt like she was drowning. She saw Kravik at a reception, and he approached her with what might have been a smile on his armored face. "Ambassador Torrens, I hear the investigation proceeds well." "Such a shame, really. Humanity showed promise. But rules are rules." "The investigation is not complete, Ambassador Kravik," she replied evenly. "I would not celebrate your victory prematurely." "Oh, I assure you, there is nothing premature about it," he said, his voice dropping lower. "Do you know what I admire about your species? Your hope. Even now, facing annihilation, you cling to hope that somehow you will find a way out. It is almost touching." He walked away before Rebecca could respond, leaving her trembling with suppressed rage. James took her elbow gently, guiding her toward a quiet corner. "Do not let him provoke you," he said softly. "That is what he wants." "He is so confident," Rebecca whispered. "James, what if we are wrong? What if we cannot find anything?" "Then we will face whatever comes with dignity," he replied. "But I do not believe we are wrong. Someone went to enormous effort to frame humanity. People who work that hard to destroy you usually make mistakes. We just have to find them." That night, at 0300 station time, Rebecca's personal comm unit chimed with an encrypted message. She bolted upright in bed, grabbing the device with shaking hands. The message was from Captain William Reeves of the Defiance. It contained a single line of text: "Found something. You need to see this. Meet coordinates attached. Come alone." The shuttle ride to the coordinates Reeves had provided took 6 hours. Rebecca told no one except James where she was going, and even then she left out the specifics. If this went wrong, if it was a trap or if she was discovered conducting unauthorized meetings with military vessels, she wanted to limit the damage to her staff. The Defiance hung in space near a small asteroid field, running silent with minimal power signatures to avoid detection. It was a patrol vessel, small and fast, armed well enough to defend itself but not built for prolonged combat. As Rebecca's shuttle approached, she saw the ship was positioned behind a large asteroid, using it as cover from long-range sensors. Captain Reeves met her in the docking bay. He was in his early 50s, a career military officer with close-cropped gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent most of his life in space. His uniform was wrinkled, and exhaustion lined his face. "Ambassador," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "Thank you for coming. What we found, you need to see it firsthand because when you present this to the council, they are going to question everything about it." He led her to the bridge, where his crew of 12 worked at various stations. On the main view screen, sensor data scrolled continuously, showing detailed scans of the forbidden reaches. "We entered the reaches 3 days ago," Reeves explained. "Took us 2 days to reach the settlement locations the Voranii identified. We stayed far enough out to avoid detection but close enough to run detailed scans. Ambassador, those settlements are real. 12 fully operational colonies, each with population signatures, power generation, and infrastructure." Rebecca felt her heart sink. "Then we are finished." "Let me finish," Reeves said, holding up a hand. "Yes, the settlements exist. But they are not human. The buildings use Voranii construction techniques. The power generators are Thrain design. The vessels that transported materials there left quantum signatures matching registered Voranii and Thrain ships." He pulled up another screen showing molecular analysis. "We got close enough to sample atmospheric output from one settlement. The air filters are processing waste products for Voranii biology, not human. These colonies were built by them and designed to look like ours from a distance." Rebecca stared at the data, hardly daring to believe it. "This proves we were framed. This proves everything." "There is more," Reeves continued. "We detected something else. Hidden communication relays scattered throughout the region, all pointing back toward Voranii and Thrain space. We tapped into one and intercepted messages. They are coordinating, Ambassador. This is not just about framing humanity. They are preparing to take control of the forbidden reaches once we are expelled from the Council. They want the resources there for themselves." He transferred a recording to the main speaker. Voices filled the bridge, translated by the ship's computer. Rebecca recognized Kravik's rumbling tone. "The investigation team will confirm the settlements within 2 days. Once the Council votes to expel humanity, we move our true colonists in. The Thrain will handle the medical technology distribution, and we will split the mineral rights from the reaches 60-40 as agreed." Another voice responded, higher-pitched and sibilant. A Thrain speaker. "And the evidence cleanup? The investigation team must not detect our vessel signatures." "Already handled. We have plasma scrubbers deployed around each site. Any traces of our presence will be eliminated before Vorik arrives. The settlements themselves will self-destruct once the Council vote is complete, erasing all proof of our involvement." The recording ended. Rebecca realized she had been holding her breath. "We have them," she whispered. "This is everything we need." "With one problem," Reeves said grimly. "All of this evidence was gathered illegally. We violated Council law by entering the forbidden reaches. Any evidence obtained through illegal means is inadmissible in Council proceedings. If you present this, Vorik will be forced to reject it, and we will face additional charges." Rebecca closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices. They had the proof. They had everything needed to expose the conspiracy and save humanity from destruction. But using it would require admitting to violations that might result in even worse penalties. "There has to be a way," she said. "Captain, can we transmit this data anonymously to Vorik? Make it appear to come from another source? Vorik would trace it back to us within hours. His team has the best forensic technicians in the galaxy." Rebecca moved to the viewport, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, on Zenith Station, the investigation team was preparing to travel to the Forbidden Reaches. They would examine the fake settlements, see what appeared to be human colonies, and return to condemn her species. Unless she could find a way to get them the truth. An idea struck her, so simple and so dangerous that she almost laughed. "Captain Reeves, can you transmit this data directly to the Voranii themselves? Make it look like it is coming from their own internal networks?" Reeves frowned. "Possibly, but why would we do that? Because if Voranii leadership believes there is a leak in their own security, they will panic. They will start sending messages, checking in with their conspirators, trying to plug the leak. All of that communication will generate traffic that Vorik's team can detect. And once Vorik sees unusual encrypted communications between the Voranii and Thrain originating from inside the Forbidden Reaches, he will investigate." James would have been proud. It was the kind of indirect manipulation he excelled at. They could not present illegal evidence, but they could create circumstances that led legitimate investigators to discover the truth on their own. Reeves considered it, then nodded slowly. "It could work. It would take my communications officer about 6 hours to spoof a Voranii internal transmission and plant this data where someone important would see it." "Do it," Rebecca said. "And Captain, thank you. When this is over, whether we succeed or fail, make sure your crew knows they may have saved our species." She returned to Zenith Station as dawn cycle began, slipping back into her quarters before anyone noticed her absence. She showered, changed into fresh clothes, and tried to calm the trembling in her hands. Everything now depended on whether the Voranii took the bait. She did not have to wait long. 12 hours later, alarm klaxons sounded throughout the station. Rebecca rushed from her office to find James already pulling up news feeds. Vorik's team detected massive data purges from the Voranii delegation's secure servers, James said, his voice tight with excitement. They also picked up spike in encrypted communications between Voranii and Thrain vessels. Vorik has demanded immediate access to Voranii records under Council Investigation Authority. On the screen, she saw Kravik being escorted by security forces toward the council chambers. His armored face showed no emotion, but his movements were stiff, controlled. He was scared. The emergency session convened within the hour. This time, the chamber was packed, every delegate present along with thousands of observers. The tension was electric. High Arbiter Theon called the session to order. "Investigator Vorik, you have requested this emergency convening before completing your primary investigation. Explain." Vorik stood at the center of the floor. His small form seemed to command the entire space. "High Arbiter, during routine monitoring of communications traffic in the Forbidden Reaches region, my team detected anomalous patterns. Encrypted transmissions between vessels registered to the Voranii Sovereignty and the Thrain Collective, originating from the exact locations of the alleged human settlements." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Kravik remained motionless in his seat. "Upon detecting these transmissions, I invoked emergency authority to examine Voranii and Thrain communication logs. What I found was evidence of a conspiracy to frame humanity for council violations." Vorik activated a holographic display. The settlements in the Forbidden Reaches were constructed by Voranii and Thrain operatives using stolen human ship designs and technology signatures. The goal was to trigger humanity's expulsion from the Council and to claim the resource-rich reaches for themselves. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted, some in outrage, others in disbelief. Theon struck his staff against the floor repeatedly until silence returned. "Ambassador Kravik, you will respond to these allegations." Kravik stood slowly. For the first time since Rebecca had known him, he looked uncertain. "High Arbiter, I deny any personal knowledge of these activities. If elements within my government acted improperly, I assure you they did so without authorization from our High Command." "Your assurances are noted and insufficient," Theon replied coldly. "Investigator Vorik, continue." Vorik presented everything his team had found, the construction evidence, the biological markers, the communication intercepts. He did not mention anything about the defiance or illegal human surveillance. As far as the official record showed, his team had discovered the conspiracy entirely through legitimate investigation. Rebecca allowed herself to breathe again. The evidence is conclusive, Vorik said finally. Humanity is innocent of all charges. I recommend immediate dismissal of accusations and formal censure of the Voranii Sovereignty and Thrain Collective for attempting to subvert council law. Theon was silent for a long moment. His 3 eyes swept across the chamber, lingering on the human section where Rebecca sat. When he spoke, his voice carried weight that transcended translation. In 12,000 years of council history, we have seen many disputes, many conflicts between species. But rarely have we witnessed such calculated deception. The charges against humanity are dismissed with full exoneration. Ambassador Torrens, please stand. Rebecca rose, her legs unsteady. You invoked Protocol 17 knowing the risks, knowing that failure would mean your species' destruction. You showed courage and faith in your innocence. The Council acknowledges this. Furthermore, we recognize that someone within our own institutions leaked classified technology data that enabled this conspiracy. Until that leak is identified and sealed, humanity will be granted provisional access to restricted council databases as compensation. Rebecca felt her breath catch. Restricted databases contain technologies decades ahead of human science. As for the Voranii Sovereignty and Thrain Collective, Theon continued, his voice hardening, you are hereby expelled from council membership pending full investigation of your governments. All trade agreements are suspended. All territorial rights are revoked. And the forbidden reaches are open to colonization, with first priority granted to humanity. The chamber fell silent. No one had expected such a severe response. Kravik rose slowly. High Arbiter, I must protest. This punishment far exceeds. You attempted to destroy an entire species through deception and false testimony before this council, Theon interrupted. You sought to steal territories through manufactured crisis. The only reason you are not facing military sanctions is because we have no desire for war. Be grateful for that mercy and leave this chamber. Guards escorted Kravik out. He did not resist. As the session ended and delegates filed out, many approached Rebecca, offering congratulations or apologies for doubting humanity. She accepted them with grace, but her mind was elsewhere. James found her in a quiet corridor an hour later. You did it, he said simply. You saved us. No, Rebecca replied. Captain Reeves and his crew saved us. I just made sure their sacrifice mattered. Will you tell anyone the truth about how we got the evidence? Rebecca shook her head. The official record shows that Vorik discovered everything through legitimate investigation. That is the story that matters. The real story stays between us and the Defiance crew. They walked together toward the observation deck, where Earth hung in the distance, a small blue sphere that suddenly felt a little less fragile, a little less alone. 6 months after the council hearing, Rebecca stood on the observation deck of the first human colony ship entering the Forbidden Reaches. The vessel, christened the New Horizon, carried 15,000 colonists eager to build settlements on worlds humanity had been granted by right of survival and courage. Captain Reeves stood beside her, officially reassigned as the fleet security commander for the new territories. His role in the investigation had never been publicly acknowledged, but privately, Earth's government had decorated him and his crew with the highest honors their world could offer. Strange, is it not? Reeves said, gazing out at the unfamiliar stars. A few months ago, we were fighting just to stay in the council. Now we are here, expanding into territory the Voranii wanted for themselves. Rebecca smiled. The galaxy has a sense of irony. Though I suspect this is less about justice and more about politics. Theon needed to make an example. The Voranii and Thrain had too much influence, too much power. By giving us these worlds, he reshuffles the political landscape. Ever the diplomat, Reeves chuckled. Cannot you just enjoy the victory? I would, Rebecca said, except I keep thinking about what comes next. We exposed one conspiracy, but there will be others. Species that resent our success, that see us as upstarts who got lucky. We won this battle, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy is just beginning. James approached from behind, his footsteps quiet on the deck plating. I thought I would find you two here. Rebecca, there is someone you should meet. He gestured to a young woman who had entered behind him. She was perhaps 30 years old, with bright eyes and the confident bearing of someone used to solving impossible problems. She wore the uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, but her insignia showed specialization in xenocultural analysis. Ambassador Torrens, Captain Reeves, this is Jennifer Park. She has just been assigned to the new embassy we are establishing on Zenith Station. Rebecca shook her hand. Welcome to diplomatic service, Jennifer. I hope you are prepared for a challenging assignment. Jennifer smiled. I have been preparing my whole life, Ambassador. I was 12 when humanity joined the Council. I watched the broadcasts of those early meetings, saw how our representatives were dismissed and ignored. I promised myself then that I would be part of changing that. Now I have the chance. There was fire in her voice, the kind of determination Rebecca remembered from her own youth before years of political maneuvering had tempered it. Looking at Jennifer, she saw the future of humanity's diplomatic efforts. A generation that would not accept second-class status, that would fight for respect and equality among the stars. I am assigning Jennifer to assist with establishing formal relations with some of the smaller council species, James explained. The ones who have traditionally been overshadowed by powers like the Voranii. Our theory is that we can build coalitions with species who understand what it is like to be underestimated. Smart strategy, Rebecca said. Build from the bottom up rather than trying to force our way into established power structures. It was actually your idea, James pointed out. From that speech you gave at the Academy 3 years ago about finding natural allies. Rebecca had forgotten that speech. She had given so many over the years, trying to inspire young people to join the diplomatic service despite how thankless the work often seemed. To think that her words had actually influenced policy, had led to someone like Jennifer dedicating her career to this cause, it filled her with unexpected emotion. They stood together watching the colony ship approach the first designated settlement world. It was a beautiful planet, covered in vast oceans and forested continents, remarkably similar to Earth in its early development. The first landing parties would touch down tomorrow, beginning the process of turning this world into humanity's gateway to a new region of space. Tell me something, Reeves said after a long silence. When you invoked Protocol 17, when you bet everything on proving our innocence, were you scared? Rebecca considered the question. Terrified. Every diplomatic instinct I had told me not to do it, that I was risking too much on too little evidence. But then I thought about what would happen if I did nothing. We would have been sanctioned, isolated, eventually destroyed through economic and political pressure. Our colonies would have withered. Earth would have been alone again, cut off from the galaxy. She paused, remembering that moment in the council chamber when she had spoken the words that changed everything. I realized that fear of failure was not a good enough reason to surrender. If we were going to fall, we would fall fighting. And maybe, just maybe, that fight would mean something. Would show the galaxy that humanity does not give up, does not accept injustice quietly. Jennifer spoke up. That is what inspired me, Ambassador. Not that you won, though that was incredible. But that you were willing to risk everything for what was right. That is the kind of diplomat I want to be. Then you will be a better one than I ever was, Rebecca said warmly. I spent too many years being cautious, trying to avoid giving offense, accepting small compromises to prevent larger conflicts. It took nearly losing everything to remember that some things are worth fighting for. As the colony ship moved into orbit around the new world, Rebecca felt something shift inside her. For 19 years, she had carried the weight of representing humanity, of trying to navigate hostile political waters while keeping her species safe. That weight was still there, but it felt different now. Lighter. Shared. She was not alone anymore. There were people like James, like Reeves, like Jennifer. An entire generation coming up behind her, ready to take on the challenges of establishing humanity among the stars. They would make mistakes. They would face setbacks and defeats. But they would also achieve things she could only dream of. "I have decided something," Rebecca said suddenly. "When we return to Zenith Station, I am going to recommend that James take over as lead ambassador for the council delegation." James stared at her in shock. "Rebecca, you cannot be serious. You are the face of human diplomacy. Everyone knows you." "Which is exactly why it is time for someone else to step up," she replied. "I will stay on as an advisor, but the future belongs to people like Jennifer, people who grew up knowing we were part of something larger than one world. They have a perspective I cannot match." "What will you do?" Reeves asked. Rebecca smiled. "I think I will take a position here, in the new territories. Help establish the colonies, work on building relationships with the other species who are also trying to find their place in the galaxy. Do actual diplomacy instead of just political survival." She watched the planet turn below them, seeing lights beginning to appear on the surface as the first landing teams established their base camps. Those lights represented hope, the hope that humanity could build something lasting out here. That they could take the second chance they had been given and create a legacy worth remembering. "You know what I realized during all of this?" Rebecca said softly. "We spent so long trying to prove we deserved to be part of the Galactic Council, trying to earn respect from species that had thousands of years of history behind them. But we were asking the wrong question. It was never about deserving it. It was about having the courage to claim our place and defend it when challenged. Is that the lesson you want people to take from this?" Jennifer asked. "No," Rebecca said. "The lesson is simpler than that. When someone tries to destroy you, when they stack the evidence and rig the game, do not accept defeat. Find the truth, no matter how difficult. Trust in your innocence if you are innocent, and fight for it with everything you have. Because in the end, the truth has a weight that even the oldest lies cannot overcome." The New Horizon began deploying smaller shuttles, each carrying colonists and equipment to the surface. Rebecca watched them descend through the atmosphere, bright streaks against the planet's blue sky. She thought about Ambassador Kravik, now disgraced and exiled from council politics. She thought about the Voranii and Thrain governments, scrambling to rebuild their reputations after the exposure of their conspiracy. She thought about High Arbiter Theon and his calculated decision to grant humanity these worlds, a move that strengthened his own position while appearing to deliver justice. The galaxy was complicated, full of competing interests and ancient grudges, political maneuvering that made Earth's own conflict seem simple by comparison. Humanity was stepping deeper into that complexity now, taking on larger roles and greater responsibilities. But for the first time since she had arrived at Zenith Station 19 years ago, Rebecca felt like humanity truly belonged there. Not because they had earned respect through careful diplomacy or technological advancement, but because they had proven something more important. They had proven they could stand their ground when challenged. They could find the truth when others tried to bury it. They could survive and even thrive in an environment designed to crush them. "I think we are going to be all right," she said to no one in particular. "It will not be easy. We will face more challenges, more species that resent our presence or our success. But we will face them the way we faced this one. Together, with courage, with intelligence, and with an absolute refusal to accept defeat when we know we are right." James placed a hand on her shoulder. "You know that speech you just gave? The one about finding truth and fighting for it? I am going to make sure every human diplomat learns it. It should be our guiding principle." Rebecca laughed. "I just made it up." It was not that profound. The best truths usually are not, Reeves said. They are just honest observations about how the universe works. And you are right, by the way. We are going to be all right. Not because we are stronger or smarter than the other species, but because we have something they seem to have lost over their thousands of years of civilization. What is that? Jennifer asked. We still remember what it is like to be underestimated, Reeves replied. We still have the hunger to prove ourselves. And most importantly, we still believe that tomorrow can be better than today. That is powerful. More powerful than any weapon or technology. The colony ship completed its orbital insertion burn, settling into a stable position above the new world. On the surface, Rebecca could see the first permanent structures being erected, the beginning of what would become a thriving human settlement. She thought about all the people who had made this possible. The scientists who developed faster-than-light travel. The explorers who first ventured beyond Earth's solar system. The diplomats who negotiated humanity's entry into the Galactic Council despite overwhelming resistance. The military officers like Reeves who risked everything to find the truth. The young idealists like Jennifer who chose to dedicate their lives to building bridges between species and worlds. They were all part of the same story, a story that started when the first human looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. A story that continued through countless setbacks and triumphs, through first contact and political betrayal, through near destruction and ultimate vindication. And now, as the sun set on this new world and the lights of human civilization began to glow in the gathering darkness, Rebecca understood that the story was far from over. It was just beginning. Thank you both for being here, she said to James and Reeves. For believing in this when it seemed impossible. For having faith that we could win. We always believed, James said simply. That is what humans do. We believe even when logic says we should not. We hope even when hope seems foolish. And we fight even when the odds are impossible. That is why we survived on Earth for millions of years. That is why we will survive out here among the stars. As the New Horizon began transmitting the first reports from the surface, confirming successful landing and establishment of base camp operations, Rebecca allowed herself to feel something she had not felt in years. True, genuine optimism about humanity's future. They had been tested and had passed. They had been pushed to the edge and had pushed back. They had faced the full weight of galactic politics and prejudice and had emerged stronger for it. The Galactic Council had trembled when humanity struck back, not with weapons or threats, but with truth and courage. And in doing so, humanity had proven what Rebecca had always believed but had been too cautious to say aloud until now. They belonged here. Among the stars, among the ancient civilizations, among the powers that shaped the galaxy, they belonged not because anyone gave them permission, but because they had the strength to claim their place and defend it. And that, Rebecca thought as she watched the new world turning below, that was only the beginning.